Obviously, same. Actually, everyone in data science almost job. So life expectancy of 2 years. And then if you go here, there are 6 years and you have got promoted. You weren't good enough to promote, you weren't good enough to yeah, sort of like using that 2 years of one role in Oracle, and then I just changed. They'll probably do this. So like do the interviews. They do probably also and they love I think it's a job, but I think it's pretty hard to was like all of them have been there 20 years. They look at my resume and it's like 2 years. But yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming. I see a lot of people from MBA, MSBA, and also from finance, and also from data science department. So, for people who are not really familiar with our club, the Data Analytics Club is dedicated to promoting the advancement of data analytics and providing opportunities to students, professionals, and anyone interested in the field to network, learn, and grow. So let me introduce about John Peach. So he's currently working as a principal data scientist for 3 years, and also he worked as a applied data scientist in Amazon and also in 2 other companies as a data scientist. So he has a lot of experience in this field, and I'm sure that he's going to provide us a lot of insights and any trends and any developments for sure. So let's welcome him, and I hope you'll find this event both informative and enjoyable.
Hi, everyone. Thank you guys very much for inviting me. This is great. I love working with students. I've been mentoring forever. Why should you listen to me? Because I don't even have 2 followers on Twitter. I don't have a Twitter account. Some things about me so that you sort of take what I say with a grain of salt, and it may or may not apply to you, certain aspects of it. So what you should be doing is when you're listening to me, take what you want, leave the rest behind. So my background is largely fairly technical. I've worked in FANG companies. If that's not the area you want to go into, some things that I say may not really apply, and other things may. So educational background. I spent like insane amount of time in school. I have multiple degrees in kinesiology, mechanical engineering, and data science. And I think one of the strengths that I got from that, because those are all like totally unrelated things, is a very deep understanding across broad fields. And that helps me a lot in my data science because I jump into an industry and it's really helpful. So like I have a kinesiology background with this health science. The org that I work in at Oracle now is health and AI. So we're talking about healthcare stuff all the time. Like I understand what's basically going on, where the rest of my team look like, I don't know what that word is. I don't understand this concept. So try to have a broad background. Work experience. I've been doing data science since like before data science was a thing. We generally called them research scientists. 10 years ago, when I moved to the States, I started using the title data scientist. So I've owned a couple of startups. I've worked for a couple of startups. And then I've worked for FANG companies. Mentoring is a big part of what I do. At any one time, I have about 30 mentees on the go. I can't keep track of them. I think it's very important for me to help lift students up. And that actually helps me stay very much in touch with the type of people that I want to hire for my teams. So how to get the most out of your formal education. So first realize you are not training for a specific job, right? When I started my education, data science did not exist. Big data didn't exist. All the techniques that I use on a day-to-day basis did not exist. When I started school, I was told I would have 3 distinct careers in my life. The new statistic I've heard is you will have 6 different distinct careers in your life. I'm not talking jobs, I'm talking careers. So the foundation of what you're trying to get here is what you're going to use to work in a job that may or may not exist today. So don't think about you want to do a specific job, right? So don't think about like, I want to be a business analyst in the entertainment industry. And that's great. If you have a career goal, that's wonderful. That may not be actually a good role for you. Historically, education has been about making good citizens. That's what universities started with. And this still lingers on in the system today. So if you want to learn a trade, you want to be a plumber, electrician, something like that, you go to community college and they train you to do that. In your formal education, especially at the graduate level, you're not training for a specific job. You're training to have a broad understanding of how things work, how to operate in business, how to work with people, that type of thing. Also, what you should be looking to do for your formal education is try to get a job, a part-time job, try to get an internship. There's lots of things that are not taught in universities, like how to get along with teammates that are idiots, how to put up with a boss that's an idiot or a pain in the butt, how to deliver on time, a lot of sort of the politics. And I don't mean like, nasty politics in organizations, but just how do you get along? Like when I was at Amazon, we all work in these, what they call 2 pizza box teams, which is like 5 to 8 people. So you have a very, very niche thing that you're responsible for, but you have dependencies on everybody else. So if you need another team to do something for you because you're blocked, you can't do what you need to do because of them, you would go to them and say, hey, Kay, can you prioritize this, blah, 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 and you try to convince them that they should do that for you. If they say no, the approach at Amazon was, fine, I'll just go do it. Like that is your domain and your space. I'll let you know that I'm doing it. I'll coordinate with you, but I'm just going to go fix it so I'm unblocked. Politics at thanks. The politics at I'll just stick that there because I talk with my hands. The politics at the part of Oracle that I work with is you don't do that, right? You find some other way around. You don't step on another team's thing. So learning how to deal with that is a big part of operating within industry. It's one of the biggest things that I see people struggling with when they first start their job. Co-op versus non-co-op. Is there any undergrads in here? One. Do you have a co-op option in your program?
I don't know what a co-op is.
Oh, okay, you probably don't then. So co-op is, some programs offer them where you do like a semester of school, then you would do a semester of work, a semester of school, a semester of work. So when you graduate, you have generally 2 years worth of work experience. And it really helps in figuring out what classes you would want to take. So like, oh, you know, like I should have known that for my previous co-op, so I'm going to take that class, or I have this co-op coming up. I've got to go take this course so that I know what I'm doing. You can do the same thing in grad school. And it's tough in the 1 year programs, but the longer programs, if you have a part-time job, just doing something gives you some experience that you can talk about when you go to apply for your full-time jobs. Develop leadership skills. You are all getting master's degrees, I assume, and PhDs in here? Okay, so you're all getting master's degrees. When they hire you, you are different than when they hire an undergrad that just recently graduated, when you're both graduating at the same time. It's expected that you may not have all the acumen for operating at a high level, but it's expected that you are a leader. So you need to develop those leadership skills. And look at a way to distinguish yourself. One of the problems that I have looking at resumes coming out of programs is you all took the same courses, you all did the same projects, you all look alike. Find something that's going to distinguish yourself from the rest of your classmates, and that makes you much more competitive. And this thingy on the bottom is. And network like crazy. So even in my life now, I still network a lot. I run a data science meetup group so that I can network. I mentor so that I can network because I meet you guys, and then someday down the road, maybe you'll hook me up with a job or something like that. And this is where you get a lot of the jobs, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, is actually through networking. So if you're an undergrad, I'll move through this quickly because there's one. Your education is about breadth, right? You are not becoming an expert in any one particular thing. You're learning a broad area of knowledge. So take meaningful courses outside of your degree. So what's your degree in?
Applied mathematics.
Applied mathematics, okay. So I would suggest you take courses, if you're interested in data science and stuff like that, take courses in computer science, take courses in, if you have an area that you're interested in going into, let's say health, go take some biology courses or some health courses so that you understand that general area. Your junior and senior years, focus on a specialization. So my first undergraduate degree was in kinesiology, which is the science of human movement. And there's 3 areas in there. There's motor control, neuroscience, and biomechanics. So my 3rd and 4th year, I took all the biomechanics courses that were offered. Biomechanics uses a lot of engineering. I went to the engineering school and took a year worth of engineering classes to boost my skill level, as opposed to going and taking, other kinesiology courses, like neuroscience and stuff like that. That's not my area of expertise in my 3rd and 4th year. And then, of course, develop your leadership skills. GPA matters, not as much as you think. So I will take somebody that has a 3.6 GPA, that has some work experience while they were going to school, over somebody that has a 4.0 and did nothing. Graduate education. So it's about depth. You're becoming a specialist in a particular area. That's why they're hiring you, is because you have a domain knowledge that undergrad generally will not have. If anybody in here doing research-based masters? Okay, I'll skip this. Limit your classes to your specialization. So if you have electives, I generally tell people to don't go take a GPA booster. Go take something that's going to help you in what you're doing. become a subject matter expert. So in my first master's degree, which was in kinesiology, I studied biomechanics, but I was very, very focused in a particular type of chronic low back pain. That was my specialty. So when I was looking for jobs in ergonomics, I was looking for jobs that were very specifically like related to lifting injuries and stuff like that. So try to focus the classes that you're taking on a specific area. Roughly how many electives do you guys have?
20,
20 credits of electives?
yeah, approximately.
2 classes per quarter roughly.
Okay, so you have a fair amount of electives. Focus in on what area you think you want to be an expert in and take courses just in that area as opposed to taking a broad spectrum of courses, right? That's what your undergraduate level was for. And then develop those leadership skills. And for grad school, I've never ever had anybody ask me my GPA in grad school. I've never asked anybody's GPA in grad school. I figure if you got a master's degree, you're probably not an idiot. And you guys don't have thesis space, so I'll move on. So how do you figure out what types of jobs you want to do? Like you may have a concept now what you wanted to do. I thought I wanted to be a kinesiologist. I thought I wanted to be an engineer. I thought I wanted to be a data scientist, right? I didn't know. So go talk to people, do informational interviews. Go on LinkedIn and say like, hey, you have a really interesting job that I'm interested in going to. Can I buy you a coffee? Can we do a half an hour Zoom call? And you just tell me about your path on how you got there. So you'll learn about what that career is really like. So if I tell you my current role at Oracle is that I develop proof of concepts for customers on very complicated machine learning problems that our solution engineers can't do. Can somebody like put up their hand and just tell me what they think I spend my day doing? Just a wild guess. Am I like building machine models all day long? Am I talking to customers all day long? Any guesses? I'm coding? Okay.
I'd say it's largely communicating with those engineers and other customers or stakeholders, but also some level of coding to an extent because you are the expert in that.
Kind of. 80% of my time is screwing around with messy data and trying to clean it up. I'm a data garbage man. The cool modeling that I do, like is it anybody here know what Alexa is? The Amazon smart device speaker. So I work on Amazon Alexa, and so if you say something to Alexa, like, hey, where is Santa Claus? We would figure out that we have a skill called the Santa Claus tracker, and we would launch you into that, right? That sounds really cool. I built some really cool AI models, but that was a tiny little bit of thing that I did at the end. Most of the time I'm beating my head against the wall because the data won't read or the data is really messy or I don't have the data that I need. So go talk to people about informational interviews, what they actually do. My job on paper sounds really sexy, but it's like 99% frustration. Get internships if you can. So take your internships as interviews. Even if there's not a job at the end, there may be one. They might create one for you if I worked at this one company called White Hat Security, and we had an intern, and she was amazing. She was supposed to be there for 4 months. We begged and pleaded for her to skip a semester and stay with us for another 4 months. She had 2 years of schooling left. We offered her an amazing job for her to come back in 2 years, and we checked in with her all the time, like, hey, do you still want to come back? Blah, blah, blah. So there was no job. She was just amazing. We loved her. We wanted to hire her. We're willing to wait. Work with somebody that has the job you want to do. So that doesn't mean if you want to be a machine learning engineer that you get a machine learning engineering job because maybe that's not your skills. But if you have data analytics skills, find a machine learning engineer in the company, become their friend and figure out what they do and figure out if that's the type of thing you want to do. Or just get the job, find out you don't like it and move on to something else. Don't latch onto that just because you thought you wanted to do that. If you are on an F1, I have completely different advice, and we can talk about that later. I was also here on an F1. Be ready to change careers. I change my career all the time as trends move, as my interests move. At the FANG companies, 2 to 4 years is your life expectancy. After that, you're hard to get hired. I don't mean this to sound really mean. When you're starting, you are really not that important. We have generally relatively low expectations of you. People come in and 6 months, like, oh, I haven't been promoted yet, or like a year into this, and like, why am I not the head of the department? Try to sort of keep your ego in check. Find value in what you do, bring value to the company. But you'll be working with people with tons of experience. And I'm an old guy now, but like when I was 20, I thought I knew everything in the world. Now that I'm 50, I realize like I was a friggin' idiot when I was 20. And I see that with new hires too. So what should you have on your resume? I don't want to read your resume. Seriously, I mean, really, really don't. Typically, I will get 100 resumes a day that I have to review. And these are the ones that have been like screened by the computing system. They've been screened by HR. So you qualify for this position, and I have 100 of you to look at. I have lots of other things to do. And looking at resumes is painful. So don't make me read your resume. Don't make me read your resume to determine if I want to read your resume. By that, I mean, don't make me have to hunt to find the information that I'm looking for. Make it blatantly obvious to me. Literally 10 seconds. That is not a joke. I spend 10 seconds and move on. If I can't figure out what this person is, I move on. If they're not interesting to me, they might have been a great candidate, but I got 99 other people to look at. I don't want to spend 2-3 minutes looking at it. At the top of your resume, this is the way John Peach suggests you do your resumes. At the top of your resume, list your hard and soft skills, and then tell me how good you are at them. Like if you are intermediate Python, say intermediate Python. If you're an advanced R programmer, tell me advanced R. Don't list out a whole bunch of stuff that you know. I have no concept of like how good you are in that. Also put your soft skills. A big part of data science, data analytics is helping the decision makers make the best decision with the data that's available. That means you need soft skills. You need to be able to talk to executives and say like, hey, you might think you know the industry and you might think that this is the way things are going, but this is what the data is telling us. And this is why I think you should be making this decision. You need those soft skills. It's just not about like, the p-value is, 0.02, therefore it's significant. Go ahead and make this decision. Like that doesn't mean anything to executives. On your resume, like I said, at the top, put your key skills and then bold those key skills throughout your resume. So if you say that you built machine learning models, then in your resume, bold all the machine learning models that you've worked on. So I can skim your resume. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to glance at your resume to decide whether or not I actually want to pay any attention to it. Then I'm going to skim your resume. If you're bolding, like if you say that, you have strong machine learning skills, and I find one machine learning algorithm that you used and it was like a linear regression, like you might have had other stuff, it just wasn't there. So bold it so I can skim it. I suggest people on your resume that you use problem action result. What I see a lot of people doing is I did this, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so like, I don't know if that was a good idea or not, right? So what I want to see is we had a problem with customer churn. I analyzed the data and built the churn prediction model. And then the result was we had a 6% reduction in churn, which resulted in $1 million for the company, right? So use numbers because you're number people, right? So as opposed to I built a churn model, blah, 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 blah. Like, How important was that? Don't force your resume onto one page. I see a lot of people doing this. I've only ever seen new hires coming out with one-page resumes. Industry resumes are generally 2 pages. If it's not on your resume, I just assume you didn't do it. So I would much rather you have the key information about your abilities on your resume. Because once I decide to read your resume, I'll spend a couple minutes reading your resume. Right? Don't hide things that you're good at. Right? If you are, you did a Kaggle hackathon and you placed 10th in the world, but you don't have enough room to squeeze that onto one page, so you leave that off. I'm like, that's actually a really key piece of information that I would like to know. Don't make it 3-4 pages. Like for most master students, like a page and a half is kind of good. Have white space on your resume. I'm going to skim it. I'm not going to sit there and read it. So a lot of people like build small margins, they use small fonts, and they cram everything together. Just have some white space so that I can skim. And then once I've looked at your resume and I've decided like I'm interested in this person, generally the next step is a phone screen. A phone screen is 2 hours of my time. It's half an hour of prep. It's an hour interview. It's a half an hour write-up. I would really like to avoid that if I don't think you're a strong candidate. It is much better for me to go look at your GitHub repo, see the projects you've worked on, the types of things that you've done, fill out your LinkedIn profile. My LinkedIn profile just goes on and on and on and on forever because I have everything in my LinkedIn profile but it's way too much for my resume. And get a portfolio website so that you can take your class projects and put it up there. So if you have like a Shiny application, like an app that you can like interact with and stuff like that. Like I can look at the code in the GitHub repo, but it's way better for me actually just go and play with it. So how do you locate jobs? Always be looking. I am always looking for the next job. I'm very, very happy where I am now. But I'm looking by finding people that are doing cool things that I might want to move to in a couple of years. Building a network of people that are hiring so that when it comes time, I want to change jobs or I want to help a friend, that I have those connections. So recruiters reach out to me all the time. I always reply to recruiters, let's stay connected. I'm not interested in your job. Why don't you reach back to me in 6 months? This type of thing. Say there's sort of 2 approaches to looking for a job. There's the gunshot approach and the long haul. So the gunshot approach is you're just going to send a bazillion resumes out there. It is so easy to apply for jobs. You just click a couple of times, like even LinkedIn like says, use your LinkedIn profile to apply for this job. Literally, you click once and you applied for the job. So you want to search sites like Monster and Indeed. These are sites that have jobs across sort of every spectrum. There's a lot of crud in there that is hard to wade through. Job titles in our field are not standardized by any stretch of the imagination. Like technically, I'm an applied scientist. Who here knows what an applied scientist is? And you're in my field, right? So in the FANG companies, they tend to have a data scientist, a research scientist, and applied scientist, and they have different sets of skills. They're all data scientists. So I tell people I'm a data scientist, but technically I'm applied. I'm talking to other people in my field, I'll tell them I'm an applied scientist. So it's hard to search these sites for the type of job that you want because the job titles are garbage. You have to actually look at the job description to figure out what the job is. So there are sites that specialize in data related jobs, but a lot of companies don't post there. So make sure you go to these sites. It's easier to find stuff in your field, but most jobs won't be there. Most most companies are posting on places like Indeed and Monster, or internally on their own website. Like, I don't think Amazon or Oracle like posts on Indeed and Monster. Like, you have to go to their website to find it. The long haul approach, and you should have started long ago. And if you haven't started, start now and do this for the rest of your career. Most jobs are hidden. There's lots of jobs that are out there that are just really hard to find, right? We have all kinds of jobs at Oracle for data scientists, but who here actually knows what Oracle is? I got 1, 2. Oracle is the second largest software development company in the world. Most of this university runs on Oracle software, right? You never heard of Oracle. You'll never go check our job site. I think we have 120,000 employees. Google, I think, is 60,000. And there's tons of jobs for people like you. Like, it's a technical company. So these jobs are hidden. So you find these jobs by networking, talking to people. I was telling somebody earlier that I interviewed for Edward Scientific. It's the second largest employer in Irvine, where I live. I never heard of them, but they make heart material, heart valves. If I didn't know somebody that worked there, I never would have thought to check that website. Right? So network and start early. So go to groups like this, go to meetups. There's a bunch of meetups in the San Diego area. There's a machine learning meetup. There's a ladies in our group. But there's a bunch of data science type meetups. Go there and start connecting with people. And you'll find jobs over time. Like, you're not going to find it tomorrow. Like, don't go to like one meetup and like, what a waste, I didn't find a job. Go to them all the time. And you'll start to develop a network, not just for jobs, but for people that you can reach out to. So there's tons of stuff I don't know about in data science, but I probably know somebody that is an expert in that area, or know somebody that's an expert in that area. So I am working on something now. It's a real-time bidding auction system where we have to figure out who we want to ask to produce a bid. I don't know nothing about this, right? But I do know people that are in this space. Phoned them up and said, like, hey, do you got an hour? You can explain some of this stuff to me and tell me like what type of approaches I should be using. And remember, internships are interviews. So I assume a lot of you are trying to get internships once you graduate. Even if there is no job at the end, treat that as an interview. Try to get internships that have jobs at the end. But later on, you know, a year or two later, they may have a job posting that you're eligible for. And, you know, you phone up your hiring manager and say, hey, I'm interested in this thing. Like, oh, Sally did an amazing job. Let's bring her in. And the other is recruiters. Sorry, it's being cut off at the bottom. Find lots of recruiters on LinkedIn and connect with them. If you have difficulty finding recruiters, go to my LinkedIn profile. I'll show you how to get there later. And search my LinkedIn profile for the word recruiters. I have hundreds of recruiters. Some recruiters are generalist recruiters. A lot of the ones that I have are specialist recruiters in data science. So you connect with them and say like, hey, I'm graduating. You know, if you have any roles, let me know. Let me send me my resume. I'll put it on file. It's also easier for them to reach out when they have something in the future. So what does a typical interview loop look like? So there is no standardized interview loop in data science. And it depends on what company you go to. But let me give you some general advice. You should go into any of these business analytics, data science interviews with stories to tell. This is, even if you had no industry experience, you could take some of your projects and say, okay, our project was to do X. This is how I went about doing it. These are the trade-offs that I made. These are the things I considered. This is what we ended up doing. This is how I would revise it. Rehearse these stories. Like, jot down the bullet points and sort of memorize them so that you can go tell that in an interview. And later on, I'll show you some of the questions that we ask, at least on the soft skills side. And it's tough to answer right off the bat, but if you've thought about these types of stories ahead of time, it helps a lot. You're going to definitely get asked technical questions and general concepts. So nobody's going to sit there and say like, hey, can you prove this statistical theorem? But they may very well ask you some general concept where like, if you have Bayes' theorem in your head, you can quickly work through it. But nobody's going to ask you to like write out Bayes' theorem on the board and calculate something. Coding. Who here is relatively new to coding? Okay, a few of you. Have you guys heard of leak code? Okay. Leak code is designed for software engineers, but nowadays, everything that you do in data, you need to code for. You do not need to be a great coder. I think most data scientists are horrifically bad coders. My wife is god awful. She doesn't create a for loop with 3 things. She just copies and pastes the code 3 times. She's getting better. She doesn't do that anymore, but that's the type of stuff she used to do. You need to be a little better than that. If I see that in an interview, I'm like, okay, I'll pass. You don't need to go and solve the complicated leak code problems because they are not relevant to what you do. And nobody's going to ask you in a data scientist interview, like, how do you write a doubly linked list? Right? We'll never write that, but you need to be able to write basic data manipulation code. Which is the next point. Most of the technical questions, the coding questions, are something you can solve with SQL or something that's like rectangular data that you need to massage or read in and do some basic cleaning. That's the bulk of sort of entry-level questions. My least favorite thing in the world is take-home projects. So take-home projects, they say like, oh, here's a problem, here's the data. Spend an hour or 2 on this. Don't put a whole lot of effort into it. Hour or 2 really means 2 to 3 days that you're going to put into this. Usually like the data is such a mess, you can't even load it in an hour or 2 and understand what's going on. And no company recycles them. So every job you have to do a separate one. So when you're talking to companies, be prepared to do these take-home interviews and make sure that you have enough time to do them. And it's all right if they say like, oh, can we give it to you on Tuesday? Can you give it back to us on Thursday? Say, no, I have other stuff going on. I'll get it back to you next Tuesday. Interviews normally are 3 to 5 rounds. You will either start with like the lowest level person and you'll work your way up to the highest level person, or you'll start with the highest level person and work your way down. How does it work at Amazon and Oracle? It's different. All the FANG companies are relatively the same way as what I'm talking about here. You will do a phone screen, and this phone screen is generally non-standardized. They will generally check your technical skills, or they will do half technical skills, half leadership type skills. And be prepared to code in a notepad. You're probably used to coding in an IDE that like auto-completes and tells you what the parameters are and stuff like that. Like open up a dumb notepad in Word or in like Windows or something like that, and try coding in that. Also try coding on a whiteboard. It's horrible. You can't move stuff around and stuff like that. So it's real practice. Then you'll go on to an on-site. So at this point, they've established that there's a good probability they will hire you. There's at least one person that is championing to hire you. In the phone screen, we're looking to filter you out. On-site, we're looking to hire you. You generally do about 5 interviews. Some of these will be technical, some of these will be soft skills or mixes of them. They're usually 45 minutes. They are super intense. So when I'm interviewing somebody, sort of judge where I think they are, and I'll ask them questions at that level. They nail it, I up the question. They nail it, I up the question. So if they're doing really well, 45 minutes of me hammering on them is exhausting. If you're not doing so well, I lower the questions down, and generally people start feeling really insecure because they're seeing the questions are getting easier. And then you have to go on to the next interview, right? So it takes stamina to do these because you typically do them one after another. You will generally have somebody called a bar raiser at Amazon. They call them a bartender at Oracle. This person is not in the organization that you are being hired for. They are very experienced interviewers. You would generally have an amazing interview with them. Their job is to balance the desire of the hiring manager to get a butt in the seat versus the company's desire to hire you as a general data scientist because you will move around within the organization. So at Amazon, I was there for 2 years, 3 months. I had 6 managers. I was on, I think, 4 teams. Oracle, I'm now on my 7th manager. And I've worked on 3 different teams. You get moved around a lot, so they're not interested in hiring you for a particular specific role. They're hiring you for general. So this is what the bartender is there for. You'll have a hiring manager. So this is the one that thinks that you're a good fit for their role. And then you will have technical experts doing the interviews. These may or may not be on your team. Some organizations will have you do a science presentation. That's generally if you have a PhD. Then they do a debrief. So when you're doing these interviews, it's kind of weird. They're sitting there typing. They're not answering emails. They are writing their notes. So I would typically go and write about this many notes in a 45-minute interview. I then take that, I clean it up, and I write summaries and that type of stuff. And that goes into a system, and then everybody does that. Everybody reads everybody's notes. So they vote whether or not they're inclined to hire you or not. They then read everybody else's notes. Then they go into a half an hour to an hour-long meeting where they discuss whether or not they're going to hire you, whether they're going to re-level you. So let's say you're coming in at a junior level and I'm like, oh my God, this person's amazing. We're going to bump them up a level. Or they're going to say, like, we're hiring for a data scientist, but really this person should be a business intelligence engineer. It's a better fit for them. So what we're going to do is we're going to decline hiring them for a data scientist, but we're going to tell recruiting, go find a team that's looking for a business intelligence engineer. We'll do the technical interviews for that role and then hire you. So what type of behavioral questions you get? Most of them are, tell me a time. We are looking for what you have done in the past because that is the best predictor of what you're going to do in the future. So sit down and think about things that you've done in the past that are interesting. Technical things like projects you've worked on, like, you might have worked on a project 3 years ago and you don't remember like the exact results, the exact things you do. Go look that stuff up so that you know it. If you have some type of leadership thing that you've done, with your groups or with an organization, go rehearse and think about, like, what was it that I really did? What did I contribute? Because you'll get questions like, tell me a time that you went and did something without seeking manager approval. Or it might be like your team lead approval if it's a group project or something like that, right? We are trying to figure out here if you have the ability to know what is right and just go do it. So whether it's, something that you have to do really urgent, like, the CEO needs this analysis and your manager's on vacation for the next week. Like, do you have the gumption and the internal ability to just go make that decision and make that call, even though that's usually not your call? It would usually be something that would be done higher up. Tell me a time when you got tough, critical feedback. I want to know how you responded to that. It tells me a lot about how I'm going to work with you. Some organizations are really sort of touchy-feely. and they care about your feelings. A lot of the tech companies don't. I'm one of them, but tech people generally have marginal social skills. So they say what's on their mind. They're very blunt. So how do you take that? And I'm not talking about like being rude. It's about like, hey, you did this, the analysis was incomplete. You didn't consider these other things. Like, what are you going to do about it? When did you take on something that's significantly outside of your scope of responsibility? Okay. Generally, we're not hiring you to do this one little thing and that's all you're going to do. You're highly educated, highly intelligent people. We expect you to do a bunch of different things. And when there's a hole, because that's nobody's job, we expect you to step up and do it. You're not a union worker in some factory putting tires on cars all day long, right? The boss comes says like, hey, we want to move you over to like assembling wiring harnesses. And they're like, you need to talk to my rep. Like they just expect you to just go do it. Identify that you need to do it and just go do it. Yes.
So what happens when you're asked a behavioral question, but you haven't actually encountered that situation? So let's take the first one. So tell me a time you acted without seeking manager approval. So what if I haven't? So do I just say it outright that I've never encountered such a situation, or is there a better way of?
A better way would be like, why is he asking me that question? So let's say you have zero work experience, right? Technically, you can't answer this because you've never had a manager. But if you think about it, what is it they're really asking me? They're asking me, give me a time when I have authorized some type of thing that was above where I was in an organization. So it may be I was working on a class project and, we had certain things laid out, Fred was going to do this and Sally was going to do this. And, and Jeff is sort of coordinating everybody, right? So Sally can't do something. So I couldn't get hold of Jeff. I just went ahead and did it. And then I'd ask you, well, why did you do it? You explain that to me. Well, it had to be done by this timeline. I would say then like, well, shouldn't you check with Jeff? What did you do afterwards? That type of stuff. We're going to have all these follow-up questions to understand what you did. Well, Jeff wasn't reachable. I thought this was probably a good call. I didn't think there was much controversy around it. I went and I talked to Jeff afterwards, brought him up to speed. I went to Sally and said, hey, Sally, I stepped into this space to do this thing. Can you review it with me so that we're aligned, that we're doing the same things? That's the type of behavior that I want you to do, as opposed to like, I can get a hold of Fred and Sally, or Jeff and Sally, sorry. Negotiating offers. Oh, yes.
Question like how relevant is for US companies the previous work experience in other countries? In my case, I was a lead data scientist and I had machine learning engineers, data scientists, and BI analysts under my supervision. But when I have been talking to some university recruiters, and they tell me that because I am going to a master's, they would land me into a and just graduate recently hired junior roles or senior roles.
Yep.
No, not even senior roles. And it is like they are disregarding the previous work experience.
Yep.
However, when I apply, so one thing that was interesting is that when I applied to data science internship, their response rate was low, even though I have many years in data science. For software engineering, it was higher. But when I apply for data science manager positions in companies that are not the bank companies, my response rate is kind of 40%, 50%.
That's actually
But they don't want to wait for me until I graduate. They want me.
because they're bringing you at a senior level. They need you more now. Junior people, you're not that important. That work doesn't necessarily have to be done, but the role that they're hiring for, they want you now. Plus, you also have a higher risk of going somewhere else. So they wait 6 months for you and then you take a better offer somewhere else, right? They're now screwed. If you are a new hire, it's really hard to get, if you're a new grad, it's really hard to get a position. There's less chance that you're going to go somewhere else. And so his question was like disregarding non-US work experience, totally a bias. It exists everywhere. I'm not American, I'm Canadian. My background is just diminished when I came here. Even though like the work culture and everything else is exactly the same, the education is basically the same. That's the system. You know, like if you want to take a junior role and then you'll advance very quickly, you have to decide that, or do you want to, you know, wait to see if you can get a level that you think is appropriate for you?
For example, if one person would decide to go to a junior level role just for like the start, then would it be possible to transfer them to another organization in a rank that is
Yeah, once you get some US work experience. Actually, in all our fields, your dollar value as a recent grad is much lower than your dollar value with 1 to 2 years of experience in data science, because every man and his dog wants to be a data scientist and a business analyst or something like that, but there's not that many talented people out there. So it's hard to, you know, figure out whether or not somebody is really qualified for the job. Once you do it for a year or two, it's like, oh yeah, you're probably pretty decent, and so your dollar value goes up. How to negotiate? Realize. Okay. Realize at the point that they are making you an offer, they want you. A lot of the power is now in your hands. Their power before was deciding whether or not they wanted you because they had tons of applicants. They have now gone and invested a lot of time and money to decide that they're going to hire you. They've interviewed tons of candidates. They've generally brought you on site. They've had all kinds of meetings internally to discuss your candidacy. They've gone and got financial approval to give you a salary offer, right? This is a lot of work. They want you. They don't want to start the process over again. Pick your walkaway number. What is the number that you are like a penny below that? I am not interested. And make this really realistic, right? If that's the only offer you have on the table, your OPT is depending upon this. You know, what's your number? Like if you graduated from here, is it 10,000? Is it 20,000? Right? Especially if you're international, you know, you got 90 days over 3 years of unemployment time. Keep in check what you think you're worth. Most people graduate, I am worth, you know, 6 figures. Probably not. One of my mentees, she got offered a job. It was a crappy job, but she took it for OPT reasons. And they offered her, I think, 59,000. So they offered her like 59,000, and she thought she was worth way more than that. I was like, well, you have a 3-year undergraduate degree in a completely unrelated field. You have a 1 year's MSBA program from a good school. Like that has value, but you're probably not worth 100,000. But don't believe me. You're a data person. Go start pulling numbers. Start scraping websites. I'm going to leave that one blank. Start scraping websites. Look at Glassdoor, that type of stuff, to find out really what you're worth. Know your worth to the company. So in the company that I'm in, there are certain roles that I'm worth a lot of money in, but if I go to other roles, like if I was to become a business intelligence engineer, you know, like my skills are not at the same level as my applied scientist skills. So I'm worth less to that company. If you can get multiple offers, that is great. Even if it's offer at the crappiest company with the crappiest salary and you would never work there because the hiring manager is an SOB, get the offer. Take the interview. Rarely companies will ask to see the offer unless they're going outside of the pay range that they're generally allowed. So just saying like, I got another offer. And they like that because like, oh, somebody else really likes them. So we're diminishing our risk on whether or not this is a good hire. And we don't know what the offer is. So we have to sort of compete and pay higher. And you can get significantly higher salaries. Know what is negotiable and what is not. And you're going to just straight up ask the HR person or the hiring manager this. So it would be things like the company offers 3 weeks PTO a year, and I really want 4 in the first year. It's generally just not negotiable. Things would be negotiable would be like, can I work from home? That type of thing. So find out from that and then negotiate those things and don't spend your capital negotiating things that the manager just would never be able to get for you. Know the process of how to get a salary adjusted. So I work for this little company called I Got an Offer where I help people get tech jobs. And one of the things company that I Got an Offer doesn't offer, but the people I help, I offer the service is like, if you get a job at Oracle or Amazon or Google or something like that, let me help you negotiate the salary because I know how it works. So I know the pay ranges for different, like the internal approved pay ranges for different job categories and different job levels at the companies that I've worked for. Then Amazon has this unwritten rule that you can get 20% above the top of that salary grade by the manager writing 1 paragraph to finance justifying it. If you didn't know that, you'd never be able to get up there. And then there's ways to go above and beyond. So if you know how it works internally, and this is where your networking can help, right? You know somebody in that company, you're like, hey, can you tell me how this process works? And not everything is about money. So every job I get is to prepare me for the next job. If you're an international student and you want to stay, every job you get is about the H-1B, and negotiate that into your and what you're going to get hired for. I've always negotiated it in. It still took me 10 years to get my green card. And then, is there value in the type of work that you're doing? So if you're doing something that is not going to develop you, then that might be a great job if you have a choice, right? I like to take a job where I am marginally competent and then I'll grow my skills. So some quick things on people that have written in some questions on like ChatGPT, how to use it in our daily lives. So if you don't know what ChatGPT is, it's a chat generated pre-trained transformer. What's a transformer? A transformer is a neural network that takes multiple inputs and then returns multiple outputs. So it might be something like, I'm going to take some text, I'm going to tokenize that, have that come in, and then instead of like saying, this is a happy comment, this is a sad comment, it would be generating text on the outside. So it does natural language generation. If you haven't played with this, it's super cool. So you tell it to do something, and you could say something like, write me some sample questions on how to use support vector machines. And it will give you like test questions on how to use a support vector machine. It's built on a massive data set. It's built off of what's called GPT-3. So if you really are interested in this type of stuff, read up on GPT-3. Okay, so how can we use this in our daily lives? So content creation for social media, instead of like writing a big blurb, you just give like the bullet points and it'll write the blurb for you. Conversational chatbots, most conversational chatbots, when I go to a website and I pop one of them up, I beat my head against the wall because this is going to be friggin' painful. ChatGPT is going to make that much more intelligent. Summarize customer feedback. This is actually a big area that data scientists work in, is what is going on. Companies like monitor all of Twitter and try to figure out what's trending about their product and stuff like that. But how do you summarize that? Nobody's going to sit there and read all the Twitter posts. Translating documents from one language to another. This is a big problem. Most technical documents are in English. That becomes very limiting. Companies spend a lot of money. Like a friend of mine, he worked for Travelocity, and he was writing a system that would take hotel descriptions and translate them to different languages. And you can also use it to write templated source code. So you can say, can you write me a piece of code that will do this? And it's fairly simple, it'll do it for you. And a big one is taking table data and documents and turning them into spreadsheets. Let's move on to these ones. So I'm almost done. This is a little plug for me. This Saturday coming up at UCI, the data science group that I run called Southern California R Users Group. It's just not about R, we do everything. Is doing a stats course on stochastic methods in machine learning. These are really cool. You don't see them a whole lot taught in schools. Most machine learning techniques you would learn if you run the data through, you kind of get the same thing. These stochastic methods do things like use random chance to try to figure out what's going on. So you're not likely to bump across these things. I use them all the time. They're super cool. So things like Markov chain, there's a variation called hidden Markov chain where you try to understand what's happening with things you don't observe. Random walk. Random walk is used for predicting stock market values. And then connect with me on LinkedIn. So this will get you to my link tree. Connect with me, say hi. Don't say hi, just connect. I occasionally post some stuff that's going on. I occasionally post like interesting jobs that come across. And start networking with me if you haven't started networking already. So I am way past my time. I apologize.
Thank you so much. That was really great. So we have some questions from students.
Okay.
So I'll just go one by one. So I think the first one is Krishna. So he asked how to tailor the CV according to the job description.
Oh, don't. You'll kill yourself. I have 2 resumes. One is my academic resume for being a professor, which I don't use anymore. My other one is for data science, and I use it for everything. This is what I did versus I'm going to pigeonhole myself into your job description. Job descriptions, by the way, change all the time based on the candidate and stuff like that. Job descriptions are kind of like the fairy tale of what we really want this person to be, but that person doesn't exist. So make it shine for what you are, not what the job is.
Yeah, I think next is Akhil. So his question is how to get a job in the big tech in the field of analytics. That's Akhil.
Right. There's all kinds of things that you can do for training. Actually, one guy that I just helped got a PhD. He spent 6 months. All he did was prepping for the interviews. He got a $308,000 salary coming out of his PhD, so it was paid off. But some of the things you can do is like what I mentioned, do basically coding. Make sure that you have good stories to tell around your soft skills. Make sure you understand what you did in your projects. You don't have to go and do a whole bunch more stuff, but know what you did, what the results were, why you did things, why you didn't do other things, what you would do different. Have that all in your mind. That will help you get through the tech interviews. They're very, very fair. They're brutal, but they're very, very fair.
Eugene Kim. So she's asking, what are you looking for in a successful candidate and what are the expectations?
I expect you as a new hire to be able to grow. You're Eugene over there? Yeah, okay. I expect you to be able to grow. I expect you to have basic leadership skills. I expect you to have basic technical skills. I do not expect you to be an expert in this one thing. because you're not training for a job, you're training for a spectrum of jobs. So have those things and be able to demonstrate them to me. So if you know exactly what you want to do, then go get those skills. But otherwise, have a good set of skills that are technical and leadership, and then be able to communicate them. You're going to come in, you guys are all at a great school, you're coming out with really good master's degrees, like you will have the technical skills. The biggest problem I notice is people don't have the ability to communicate them. They haven't thought about them ahead of time. They don't have the interpersonal skills to like take challenging questions.
Yeah, Sean, what skills do they expect in the future?
Oh, if I knew that, I would be like running my own company, selling you those skills. I think the number one skill that I have is that I learned to teach myself. 50% of, most of my jobs, I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm learning those skills to do it. So that's why I say, like, I expect somebody to be able to grow. If you want to learn any particular skill, learn to teach yourself. Learn to think for yourself, learn to question things. Being able to like memorize a bunch of like mathematical equations or like this is how an algorithm works. It's fine, but Google exists. Be able to explain, well, this is why it works and this is where it fails.
We have questions from Eugene Park. So what was the toughest thing you encountered when searching for a job?
So early on, the toughest thing was figuring out where I sit within organizations. So I don't have I went to school, I studied X, and now I'm being hired under X. So my toughest thing was what value do I bring to a company? And so even, in the master's programs you're bringing now, like, how do you distinguish yourself from your classmates? Because you all look the same. Figure out what distinguishes you from that. So if you don't have a strong coding background, maybe you're really good at visualization because you have come from an arts background or something like that. Figure that out. And that's really hard to do. I'm old now, so I have a pretty good idea of what I'm good at, what I'm not good at. So it's easier. But early on, it's really tough.
We have the next question from Carmen. What are some of the biggest challenges you have encountered in the data science field?
Oh, dirty data, finding data. Where's Carmen? Oh yeah, I was talking to you. Yeah, dirty data. I don't have the right data. Like I'm working on a project now where they gave me a bunch of data. 75% of it is constants. It's garbage. And the data that I have isn't really predictive of what I'm trying to predict. And the data is actually really in a tough form. So they don't have a system to log the data that I want. So what they did is something called a PCAP, a packet capture. So as the internet traffic is going across the network card, you just grab that as a big stream. And that's what I got. It's all just binary text that I then have to convert, parse. So those are like the really frustrating things. And bigger companies getting access to data or finding data is a huge problem. So Amazon and Oracle, we got everything. But where is it? Or how do I get access to it? Because they actually have that type of stuff locked down. Those are the biggest problems. So some of the fact comes in like the social skills, the networking skills to be able to go find that data. Who do I ask in the organization? How do I convince somebody that doesn't want to give me access to that data because I'm outside of that organization that I should have access? Those types of things.
We have a couple of questions from Gabriel. Gabriel's here. So how would you recommend finding positions in the US after several years of experience? Is it true that companies might disregard experience in other countries?
You asked me that. Yep, totally they do. I hate it. It's the way that it is.
So when in advance should one be starting to apply for full-time positions? The companies might not be willing to wait until one's graduation.
So it depends on the type of position they're hiring for. So if they're a new hire, they'll wait. If it's a more senior level, they want you now. Typically, we like somebody to be available within 30 days. You can always push that out. So it's going to take them 30 days to get you a job offer. So that's your first 30 days. The next 30 days is like, oh, now that I have it, I need another 30 days. You're international, I got visa problems. That gets pushed out. At this point, they've already decided they're going to hire you. It's very time consuming for them to say, okay, we're not going to hire you and go back and start the process over again. So you can play the system.
Next question is from Shuyan Kao. The question is, what other type of analyst jobs can finance students apply? I feel like analyst jobs prefer MSBA students or students with more coding skills.
I don't have a great answer for that because I'm not really in this field. Go get those other skills if you want to work in that field, for starters. Like if you want to be doing data analytics and you can't code, that's a tough road to haul. One of my criteria is if I see Excel as a requirement in a job, I'm not going to do it. That's not a job for me. But Excel is an important finance skill. Go learn those other skills. Now your expertise is on the financial side of things that the people you're competing against doesn't have. That becomes your value proposition. You know finance. Pick up the skills that you're missing.
Tanvi Sanjay Joshi asked, any tips for freshers applying for DS roles in the current market situation?
Oh, the market right now is great. No, seriously. There has been a lot of high profile layoffs. But if you look at the stats of it, so the FANG companies that are doing all the layoffs, right? They had a hiring rate like this for scientists. The pandemic happened, the hiring rate went like that, right? It just exploded because everybody was online. Now they've laid off a whole pile of people. It's really bad, but what they've gone and done is they're still well above the number that they had at the start of the pandemic, and they're still above if you just continue that growth curve. So what's those people? I mean, they're really, really good, right? They're at the FANG companies, they're at the top companies. They will land a job. The pressure is a downward pressure on the person that would have gotten like the tier 2 company job. Now, the tier 1 employee is taking the tier 2. So it pushes down, but you are not competing against any of those people. The labor market is still really hot. There is still a huge labor shortage, and the labor shortage is really bad for us because there was not enough people trained to do what we need to do. We right now in the sort of probably next 10 or more years are relatively recession proof. We might lose jobs and stuff like that, but you will get one fairly quickly and it will be a pretty decent job. So I wouldn't worry about it. Getting your first job always sucks. Like seriously, you're going to be frustrated as all can be. But there's lots of jobs out there for us.
Next is job search strategy when changing a job profile.
Like what I've said before, network, figure out if that's the right job you want to do, identify your value proposition. What is it that you're bringing? Identify your weaknesses and go fix them, right? Learn, be able to teach yourself stuff. So if you're not good in, let's say, classifier systems, and this job has some of that, but take some Coursera courses, read a book. Nobody's going to hire you expecting you to be an expert. They expect you to know the basics of it. If the job was to hire an expert for a classifier system, that's not you anyway, so don't worry about it. You're not applying for that job.
Okay, are referrals important?
Yes, absolutely. 100% referrals are important. Even referrals from somebody that doesn't know you. And referrals, I do all kinds of referrals. If you send me a link to an Oracle job in your resume, I will refer you. Because if they hire you, I get $1,000 or $50 or something. If I know you, I generally write a nice letter to the hiring manager saying like, hey, this is Sally, this is where I know her from, these are her strengths, this is where I think she'll fit into the company. Let me know if you have any questions. And hiring managers really like that. Hiring is dangerous. A psychopath can pass a 4-hour interview coming off completely normal. An incompetent person can BS their way through an interview if they get the right questions. Now we're stuck with them. So a referral says, I know this person, I think they'll fit in with the company culture. That takes a lot of the risk off of it for the hiring manager, right? Even if I don't know you all that well, I'll say that in the email, but like, hey, this is where I know them, blah, blah, blah. Because if I think you're a crazy Looney Tune or wildly incompetent, I'm not going to refer you. I might tell you I do, but I'm not going to refer you. Or I might write the hiring manager saying, hey, I did the referral, disregard this person. So referrals are really important. The other thing is it gets you past a lot of the filters. I'm looking at 100 resumes a day. If I got 3 referrals, I'm going to pay attention to them. I'm at least going to look at your resume because you got a referral. Somebody in the organization says, hey, this is a decent person. So yes.
So just a follow-up question on that. So does the position of the person matters, like you giving a referral or a person who's doing an internship in Oracle is going to matter, or it's the same?
No, they all have value. But if you're applying for senior applied scientist at Oracle, I'm a principal data scientist, and I say like, hey, I worked with this person for a year. I think these are the level of competencies that they have. I think these are the areas that they have for growth, but I think they're teachable. That matters a lot, right? That I just gave that person a whole pile of information that they may not be able to get from the interview, right? If an intern says like, hey, I know this person from this meetup group that I go for, he's a senior level, I'm a lower level, definitely get that referral, but it's not going to carry as much weight because it's harder for you to judge this person's skill.
How do you prepare for case studies? Any websites you suggest, or
no. Case studies, you're never not going to know what the problem is ahead. Here I'm answering case studies that you do during the interview, not those pain in the butt take-home problems. The big thing with the case studies is being able to understand what it is that they're really asking you and the ability to manipulate the question to your area of competency. So you might want to practice this with each other. So if somebody asked me, how would you build this recommender system, right? No, sorry, they wouldn't ask me that. They would say, we have a bunch of books that we're trying to figure out who we should offer them to, right? So that's a classic recommender system. I don't know a lot about recommender systems. I would rescope that problem. That is a very vague problem into something that I know more about. And that takes practice. So you can practice with your classmates. Go on every interview that you can get. Apply for crappy jobs that you would never want to take, so that you can practice these skills.
What are the biggest opportunities in the industry right now, and what can be the upcoming jobs which will boom in the near future?
I don't know the answer to that, and I don't think it really matters. If an area where you want to work, we have choices in where we want to work. It mightn't seem like it when you're trying to get your first job, but you will have choices on where you want to work. I can't stand marketing. Yeah, all the marketing people out there are great. Like, to me, kill me now. Like, trying to get somebody to buy some widget that they don't really want, like, that does not interest me. I stay away from those areas, and I don't bring any value to those areas. So pick an area that you're interested in, but at least think you're interested in. Try to figure out if that's actually where you want to go, and then build your skills out towards that. Don't try to predict what the next big thing is, because you're never going to know. Like, if you know that, then please come tell me, and let's go invest somewhere.
So what are your favorite data science websites, and which website is the best place to learn about the industry and stay updated about the data science?
That's very specific. I don't tend to read general data science websites. I have ones that would be generally irrelevant to you guys that I read. Or this is an old person website, slash.com, that has little short stories about the big things that are happening in tech. So I read that. Reddit has tons of subspecialties. So pick an area that you want to get good at and then go find those websites.
I think we're almost done. So just have one question from it. Do you think ChatGPT is going to take our job? Like business analyst jobs where you just need SQL?
No, I don't think so. So historically, what's happened is the blue collar jobs have been at risk, right? They developed the automobile and the guys that shoveled the horse poop and managed the horses stalls and stuff like that. Those jobs went away. What were they replaced with? They were replaced with other blue collar jobs that required a higher level of skill, right? Assembling a car requires a little bit more skill than shoveling poop. What's happening now is the white collar jobs are now in the line of fire. But that's fine. You will shift to where the white collar jobs are because you're going to learn new skills and move in that direction. Where we are right now, the tools that are coming down the pipeline are tools that are going to help us. So things like there's a lot of artificial intelligence in IDEs for coding, right? You start typing something, it will suggest the code that you need and that type of stuff. That didn't eliminate the computer scientist job, it made them more efficient. So we're going to see lots of efficiencies in our jobs. I was talking to a radiologist one time because I thought, like, radiology, like the imaging systems are getting so good, like the radiologist is going to be, disappearing. She's like, no, absolutely not. We will have fewer radiologists, but what's going to happen is the systems are going to identify things to us faster, and then we validate them, or we start teaching them where they're failing. And so as opposed to sitting in a dark room looking at MRI scans all day long, their skills are going to shift to more of a coding technical skill as opposed to just looking at images all day long.
Okay, so if anyone has any questions, just feel free to ask.
In the back.
So, 2 or more years of experience reduces the chance of getting into internship. Like, as it reduces the chances of getting internship.
Because you have 2 years of experience somewhere else? Is that somewhere else in the United States?
No.
Yeah, largely people, they don't care about your work experience outside of that.
So, follow up to that, it's basically like people who have less experience, let's suppose 1 year experience and somebody has 5 years experience. For an internship position, it's largely the same. So that's what you're trying to say. If they have outside US.
Outside the US, your experience gets discounted big time. You're still eligible for internships. I would be more inclined to hire somebody with several years of experience, especially if I knew that this internship was actually an interview. Because but there's a higher probability that we'll hire this person. Plus, there's a higher probability that this person understands how to work in a business versus being in academia. These are 2 radically different worlds, and it's a big transition for people. A lot of people really struggle with it. Any other questions? Yeah, Carmen?
So, I mean, with the title, it mentioned like transitioning from academia to industry, like, especially in data science, like there's definitely a fine balance of like technical and the business side. So like, how do you kind of balance out that in data science?
Identify what your value proposition is. So you don't have a lot of business experience, but you have a strong stats background. So apply for roles that don't necessarily have like customer facing in the beginning, right? Apply for roles that require a strong understanding of data. The people that you're going up against with CS backgrounds don't have a strong understanding of data, right? Your value proposition is that you understand data, you understand relationships between things. You will pick up the business stuff, but don't go after the business aspect of it. So if you have, let's say, a background in marketing or some types of humanities, then your value proposition is probably more on the business side of things. You probably have better communication skills. You probably have better interpersonal skills than the more technical people. And I'm not bashing on anyone, it's just those that tend to be the tendencies. So that's the value proposition that you're bringing. Don't go after the hardcore CS machine learning jobs. Your value proposition isn't there. Did that answer your question?
I have two questions. One is, when would you recommend to graduate? In June or in December? According to how market conditions are.
Marketing conditions, don't worry about it. The value you get, it's very personal. But if I was in your shoes, and I've been in your shoes, I would maximize my CPT so that I can use the rest of my OPT. So if you can get internships on your CPT, even though you have to pay the school a bunch more money, that may have much better value than doing an internship on your OPT. Sense?
So once one graduates, then you would recommend to focus mainly on getting the sponsorship or the visa, even if it's in a junior level position, to then look for higher positions. So that, like the other companies, I'm not sure if the other companies would see your new junior position as like you're a junior now, and then maybe if they see a junior applying for managing positions, they would not pay attention to them.
So when my mentees ask me these questions, I generally ask them, what is more important to you? Do you plan to stay in the US? Are you fine with going through your OPT and moving back home? Is title and salary all that important to you? So most of the people that I mentor, their goal is to stay in the US, right? You got to pay off your student loans here. And you need to make US money for that. So lock in your OPT, right? You don't want to burn through your 90 days and not have a job and then have to go back home. So take something and put your ego aside. Lock in that they will sponsor you for an H-1B. Like if you have no choice and a company is offering you a position, they say, we don't sponsor, take it, keep looking for a job for a company that will sponsor you for an H-1B. And then once you have H-1B, go to companies that will sponsor you for your green card. So your H-1B is limited. If staying in the country is what you want to do. If title and money is what you want to do, which is perfectly fine, then hold out for the title and the salary. But taking a lower level one and transferring jobs. The way I look at it was in the 90s, there was this downsizing thing that happened. And what it used to be, companies would hire you and basically, you'd kind of work there for forever. And then the companies decided, well, we have all these employees that aren't doing much, so let's get rid of them and we'll make the company the right size. And the side effect that I see of that is people realized my company doesn't have much loyalty to me, so why should I be loyal to them? So, if a better job comes around, I move. Because they're not going to offer me pay raises and stuff like that. And actually, that's the way you get job title increases and salary increases, is to move.
Yeah, actually, job hopping is like the best way to get raises. But how many times can you do that in the US? Like being at a job for 3-4 months, and
3 or 4 months, I would kind of do that once, and then you explain that away, like, hey, it wasn't the job I thought it wasn't a good fit. I didn't want to waste their time and money, so I left. If you've done that 4 or 5 times, then there's probably something wrong with you. There was a question back here in the corner.
When you interview the candidate, you take a lot of notes.
Yeah.
So what kind of notes do you take, like more upfront thing you look for?
The notes that I'm taking is what they said and sort of my interpretation of it. So, and maybe they said I used I had 50 features, I had 1,000 observations, and I did a linear regression. So I would write down that. And then I would say something like, I asked them about overfitting on linear regressions with large numbers of features or large data sets. They had no response. I questioned around it. They lack a fundamental concept of that. And that's what my notes would say. And then I would take the summaries afterwards and I would write a summary of that.
I think one last question.
You mentioned earlier about like distinguishing yourself. What are some of the best ways that you've seen people do that?
Get to know people. The biggest thing is what I said earlier, but the biggest challenge is what is your value proposition? What is it that you bring that can really help a company? So I've never done a job that I got hired for. I get hired for a job and then I change the job within the organization so that it fits me best. And I do that by showing them the value of it. So when I first came to the States, I got a job as a software engineer in a company that was starting in analytics. I had time gaps, I needed a job, right? So I took it. Within 2 weeks, the company realized that they had mishired me, that I had a lot more value helping them understand their data. They created a new team called Labs. I was the only member of the team. And my job was to analyze their data and find ways that we could use what we know about our customers to make more money. But that's not what I got hired for, right? I figured out my value prop, they figured out my value prop, and the role changed. I'll be around if there's other people have questions.
Thank you so much, John. That was a great event. So guys, you can just have your dinner.
You take a selfie, don't let's.
I need a phone.
Take it in. No, along with,
Smile like you like election.
along with. But he is okay. He tried.
Thank you guys very much for coming out. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. If you have questions, shoot them to me. I will try to respond in a timely fashion.
Thank you.